everybody. Welcome in for In My Feels But I Heal podcast. I'm super excited to be in the seat today and also bring you my wonderful guest, Amanda. So I'm going to let her introduce herself. So who are you and what do you do?
So my name is Amanda Garza, and I am a mental health therapist at Ajana Therapy. I work with a lot of first generation, second generation people. A lot of what I do is helping people discover themselves, find their voice. And one of the main things that I work on is parentification.
Which is today's topic, parentification, which also affects us a lot and affects my identity as well. And so this is an important topic to address and hear, like, what is it? Where does it come from? How can it be passed down? Is it affecting me now? What are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, so parentification is a role reversal. This happens whenever, for whatever reason, it could be mental illness, it could be maybe one parent is, it could be a single parent household, it could be substance abuse, anything like that. But the child ends up taking on the role of the parent. Maybe you're offering emotional support or practical support. So this doesn't mean that you have to do chores as a child. That's not parentification. That's, everybody does that. But this is whenever that chore, like maybe it's you have to wake up every morning and make breakfast for your siblings, and you have to do that every single day. You have to make sure that they're on top of their homework, or your mom's constantly turning to you for emotional support.
Mhm.
And once you start becoming more of a giver rather than a receiver, that's whenever it's parentification. And it's an issue because it affects our developmental attachment styles. So when you have been parentified, you might end up being more highly anxious. You feel overwhelmed a lot. You struggle regulating your own emotions. So you can be affected in just so many different ways. And a lot of times people have no idea what parentification is. They have no idea that this isn't normal. And there's different types of parentification.
Mhm.
So one of those being emotional parentification, and that is one that has a huge effect on you. But because it tends to happen when you're so young, you haven't realized that these are unhealthy patterns. I'm not supposed to be comforting my parents. I'm not supposed to be taking care of their needs more than my own. Um, but because we've learned to do it, it's just normal. And then we end up doing that in other areas of our lives. And maybe this is where codependency can come from. This is where you might struggle in relationships because you really want someone who's nurturing you and you place that onto your
The
partner.
responsibility.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. And now your partner's now in this role of having to nurture you and maybe mother you or parent you. And they're like, I didn't sign up for this.
So the attachment and then the codependency, and it's interesting when we take the viewpoint of how culturally we develop this as well. And I think about generational, like first generation immigrants, and
Hmm.
also like our parents whenever they come into the U.S.
Hmm.
And then their hierarchy of needs is survivalship. It
Yeah.
is like I'm feeding you, I am giving you a roof, and not holding space for your emotions.
Yeah.
What do you see in that immigrant family structure?
Yeah. So what tends to happen is sometimes parents are hardworking. They are spending hours and hours away from the home because they have to bring money into the household. And so the other parent kind of operates more like a single parent. So it's like, okay, the older sibling's going to take care of the younger siblings. They're going
Hmm.
to, or especially if there's translation services needed,
Yes.
then the child is doing the translating. And some of the stuff, it's just like, it's stuff that children shouldn't have to
Mhm.
hear or translate.
You end up making decisions too,
Yeah.
because maybe your parents don't understand the cultural context or societal context whenever they come to the US, but maybe their uprising, they understand it because they interact with the teachers, the kids, some
Hmm.
of the adults that are English speaking.
Hmm.
So then you end up making decisions for your parents.
Yeah. But don't think that you're going to be good at making decisions because
No.
you did it as a child. It turns out that if you've been parentified, you more than likely struggle with making decisions as an adult. You have a hard time making decisions. You maybe because you're looking to try to please people,
Mhm.
and when it's just you that you're making a decision for, you're so used to putting everyone else ahead of
So
your
you're not
own
even
needs.
considering yourself at this
Nope.
point. You're considering other loved ones. I'm
Mhm.
imagining that what are their needs? What do
Yeah.
they want? And that's interesting too, because then I think about, oh, maybe I want to move one day, but I'm thinking about my mom, thinking
Mhm.
about my dad. I'm not even thinking about myself in these choices and decisions. I'm
Yeah.
thinking about other people.
Yeah, yeah, I can't leave them behind. They need my help too much, even though it's a really good
Mm,
opportunity for you to move. And something else that tends to show up is just think about like the older generations. They didn't realize that it wasn't known how big of an effect that nurturing and holding space for your children creates. So we think, oh, I'm meeting their basic needs. They have a
mm,
home, they have a roof over their head, and I'm feeding them. Um, I've done my job,
yeah. And
but
sometimes that's part of the argument too.
yeah,
Like I already fed you. Like, what else do you want?
what more do you
What more
want
do you
from me?
want?
And it's like, well, I want you to hold me. I want you to make me feel safe. I want you to support me and guide me. But when we do that for our parents, we lose our own identity and we have trouble distinguishing who am I? What do I like? What are my needs? What is it that who is it that I would like to become?
Yeah, and I feel like I've gotten lost in that in between
Mhm.
myself, like translating for my
Mhm.
parents, and then for some time I felt like I was a family admin, holding all the passwords, holding all the accounts, paying the
Yeah.
bills, making sure. And then they now kind of expected,
Yes.
like, hey, why hasn't that bill gotten paid? I'm like, this is your
Yeah.
responsibility, and I'm already moved away from the home, but those expectations still stay,
Yes,
and
I
that's
still get
weird.
calls, from my parents, "Hey, do you know the password for this?" Like, "I have no idea, I didn't set up this account, or I did set up this account for you, but you lost your password and
Three
didn't ask
times
me." Yeah, 10 times.
over the last 2 months.
Yeah, and then you changed it. Now I don't know what it is,
Mm.
but yeah, in my family, I have 2 brothers with autism, and then
Hmm.
my oldest brother has, mental health issues of his own. So growing up, I always felt like, "Oh, I can't burden them more." I
Oh,
can't
mhm.
burden them more, I can't add on to
Taking the
that.
load off them.
Yes, yeah, and that's a
Yeah.
form of parentification, um, because and it ended up being, like, later my mom and I talked about it, and she's just like, "Oh, I didn't know you needed support." And
Oh.
I was diagnosed with ADHD
Mhm.
in high school, but I didn't actually realize it 'cause the psychiatrist didn't say that.
Mhm.
So I was like, "Hey, can I get off this medication? It's not doing anything for me." He's like, "Oh, no, you're very ADD." I was like, "I
What?
am?"
Nobody told me.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like nobody told me. And I just kind of dismissed it because
Mhm.
again, the medicine didn't work. Come to find out as an adult that it was Strattera and that didn't really do anything for children.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's why it didn't work. And I was like, oh wait, I am ADD, very ADD. But my mom was just like, well, we didn't know. Like we just didn't
Wow.
know. We didn't, you did good in school.
Mm. So when did you start seeing it affect you that it became a conversation topic for you? What was happening for you around that season?
I believe it was the pandemic.
Wow.
I wanna say it was the pandemic and just, like, lack of structure. It just
And
got
routine and
yes, routine, it got really, really loud, and I was just like, "I can't do this." And then I kinda revisited the ADD. I was like, "Well, maybe I do have it because I do have a lot of symptoms of ADD." And I went to a doctor, and he's just like, "Yep,
Mhm.
you're scored with flying colors."
Can you describe some of the symptoms so people know who are watching what is ADD?
Yeah, so ADD, it used to be called ADHD, ADD or ADHD. Now it's ADD with hyperactivity. And so for me, I really struggle with executive functioning, which means if I have to do something, for example, I have to I'm gonna come here for the podcast. Then
Mhm.
it's like, oh, but I gotta clean the house first. But hold on,
Me.
I gotta like do the dishes. I have to wash my clothes. I have to make sure that everything is like I made the bed like right before I came. My husband's like, I was gonna do it, but I'm just like, but it needs to be done now. But it's just like you cannot do one task simply. You have to do all of the other things before you can get to the task. I get bored very easily. I would
Do you finish conversations in your mind?
just in my mind, but not out loud.
Mhm,
And then
mhm.
I'm, like,
You're
already moving
patiently like,
on.
"Okay."
Yeah, would start stuff a lot. Like, I have a pile of stuff to crochet, I have a pile of stuff to embroider, I have art supplies, I have all kinds of things. I'd start doing it, gets boring because you actually have to sit down and learn how to do these things. And that takes the fun away from it. So then I'm like,
Mm,
I'm done.
that
I'm
makes
ready to
sense.
move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it can show up in a lot of different ways. It's not just, and for girls and women, it shows up differently. So a lot of times it's not really recognized in girls or women. And I want to give a shout out to another podcast that's really good about ADHD.
Mhm.
Um, the bar is ankle high.
Okay.
So the
You gotta
bar is
listen,
ankle
y'all.
high. Start off with episode 1 because they all have weird titles because they're both ADD and like one of them is like squirrel brain or just looking at the titles, you can't always tell what the episode is going to
Mm,
be
mhm.
about. But they start off with one of the hosts was diagnosed as an adult and the other as a child. So they both give their lived experiences of what that was like. And they take you through all the different symptoms of ADD, including rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which means that you do not handle rejection well. You might even feel it physically within your body. Um, and again, this is perceived
Mhm.
rejection, not
Right,
always
right.
actual rejection. And they even talk about how hormones play a role
Mhm.
in ADD too.
And so
So,
you talking about ADD, I wonder how much hyperdrive that also took into your role of parentification.
mhm. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, because I felt like I had to do a lot. Like I remember as a child, one of my brothers is like he's nonverbal, he's completely one to one, and he would always tear things up. And I remember I spent a long time cleaning my room because he had destroyed it. And so I put everything in place. And then I think I went to go take a shower. And just within those 20, 30 minutes, the room was just a complete disaster. I just remember like sobbing because I was like, I spent so
All
much
my
time on
work.
this. Yes, all my work. I was like, and it took so long to get it the way that I wanted.
Mhm.
Um, so also that's like just I think something that comes up, you that loss of control.
Loss of control.
Yeah.
Within parentification, that makes sense too, because you're giving up yourself
Yes.
in that process of figuring things out for others, making sure
Mhm.
everything's aligned for everybody else, or readjusting to maybe somebody else's circumstances of what needs to get done.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, and when we talk about loss of control, for parentified children, this can show up as an eating disorder. It can show up as substance use, um,
Wow. Hmm.
risky sexual behavior. There's so many different things that pop up with that because you're just trying to control one aspect of your life.
Hmm. And so we had also talked a little bit off screen about what parentification also does to us generationally.
Mhm.
And you brought forward some of the generational information. So, what is generational trauma? We can start there. And so, I think you also have a definition for this, and I'll add on to your definition as well.
Yeah, so generational trauma is just anything that occurs within your parents, to their ancestors, because in each step, for example, what shared earlier was that my grandmother married at the age of 13. Her husband was 23. I believe it was an arranged marriage, and she essentially had to go straight into becoming a mother. Um, no 13-year-old is ready to be a mother.
I cannot imagine myself
Yeah,
at 13.
yeah, their feelings just have their brain hasn't fully developed. Your brain doesn't fully develop until you're 25.
Mhm.
Um, so the way that showed up for her was she was very angry about things. She didn't know how to regulate her emotions. She didn't know how to offer space to her children, and she had like 12 children.
Mhm.
So, wait, like when you have that many children in your household, as a lot of immigrant families do, there's less room to give to attention to each
Yeah.
child. So the older children end up doing the parenting and they can only give so much. So then your parents, for example, my mom, something that she learned was machismoism. That's huge in the Mexican culture. And so it's
Mhm.
like, okay, well, I like,
How do we treat our men?
yeah,
And then they
yeah.
raise us with those beliefs of like, how are
Mhm.
we supposed to treat our men?
Yeah, and she's always like, I don't want to do to you what my mom did to me, and I don't want it to be that bad. And so she did improve, and there's
Mhm.
things that she did a lot better than her mom, but there's still a whole lot of ways that that showed up for her, which makes me have my own issues because I like get mad at my brother, like I'm not gonna do
Oh
your
my God.
do your clothes, I'm not
Mm.
gonna do that. Like you're an adult, you
I'm
can
like,
do
you have
that.
legs, go pick up your own meal.
Exactly. And so a way that this showed up, I remember I think I was maybe 18, 17. I think I was either a senior in high school or right after. Um, And I think my mom wanted me to wash my brother's clothes, and I said no, and it turned into a
Dun, dun,
huge
dun,
deal.
dun.
Yes. Cold I got the cold shoulder for, like, a week or 2 weeks. Actually, I wanna say maybe it was even a month. But I had the cold shoulder to the point where, like, she would make just enough food for everyone else, not for me. I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know you wanted to eat." And it's like,
Your child doesn't wanna eat?
"Yeah, I'm hungry." I was
I'm
like, "I'm
hungry,
hungry
feed
too."
me, please.
So, and this is her being a better parent, but she still
Mhm,
has, like, her faults and everything because she doesn't know how to regulate her emotions.
mhm. How to
So
separate herself, the situation, and you, and your emotions.
yes, yes,
Wow.
and it's just like, "No, you're wrong because you're not doing what I want you to do, because you're not doing what generations before us have done."
Versus Amanda's point of view of like, well, this is an able body, this is an able person.
Yeah.
Like, go wash your own clothes or
Yeah, he's an
mhm,
adult. I'm the youngest in the family. This is my oldest brother. Why are you telling me to do stuff for him?
mhm,
Um, so generational trauma can show up just in what have your parents held? How are they still hurting?
mhm.
And how is that being passed down to you? So
Yes.
something to think about is what have my ancestors passed down to me?
Mhm.
And do I want to hold it? Do I
Yes.
want to hold on to this? Do I want to carry it to the next generation?
Mhm.
Or can I let go and can I choose to do something different?
Completely. And to add on to the definition of generational trauma, I actually spoke about it today, earlier today. And we talk about what are the related traumas. So,
Mhm.
seeking asylum, genocide, slavery, even financial hardships, things
Mhm.
that can then be inherited and pushed forward into other generations. So, even if you don't experience the trauma
Mhm.
directly, you will experience the side effects that are
Yeah.
left emotional, physical, all the aspects of it, that's what gets pushed forward to you. And so, what does that do to the family dynamic? Sometimes it looks like lack of communication,
Mhm.
repression of emotions, anxiety, depression, PTSD.
Mhm.
And then, if you think about it, if my mom has anxiety, PTSD, depression, then how does that change the way she functions in the family dynamic? How
Yep.
does that function when she treats me? When we can't hold space for my feelings and emotions because mom's going through it too.
Mhm.
Or I also was reading the parenting styles. Then it alters your parenting
Yeah.
style because they weren't parented with a healed mindset. They were
Yeah.
parenting off a broken parenthood mindset.
Mhm.
And we're the ones that are then responsible for
Yeah.
recognizing these triggers and then putting a stop to it and then finding healing in a space where maybe healing hadn't been done before.
Yes. Yeah, and that's a very good point, just finding healing where healing hasn't been done before. And I do wanna add that trauma not only it's not just about, "Oh, I have PTSD now, I have, anxiety," but it literally changes your DNA. So, let's say, mom has trauma in her life. Now, maybe the DNA has changed, maybe you're going to be more of an anxious person because now you have a gene for anxiety.
Wow.
So,
And that's like the inherited aspect
yeah.
of things that even to the biological aspect of
Yep.
things, you are altering ways of functioning that now have become normalized in the family and now normalized in your genes, normalized in you as a person, but then we see it damage us in our
Mhm.
present state.
Yeah.
Um, it damages me and my relationship with my partner, with my friendships, with maybe my siblings as well. Like, what are their expectations of me versus them? Or
Mhm.
I even get scared about like, okay, one day I'm gonna have to parent, and I hope I don't pass this forward.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
and that's something that's very common in children who have been parentified, is just, like, they have their own fears about becoming a parent, and I will say, like, I don't have any kids, but
Does
that
it
is
keep you from wanting kids?
yeah, because for part of it is I already feel so tired, because I already feel like I've been a parent for so long that it's like, "Oh, I'm just like, this is my time to take care of myself and put myself first, and also to heal." But there is also healing in being a parent and healing that mother role or that parent role, and being able to give to your children what you didn't have and recognizing like the different patterns and knowing like, okay, I'm not going to repeat this. I'm going to let this go. I am letting this go, and I'm doing different.
Yes, and I like how you mentioned the process of letting go because then there's grief in there
Hmm.
too. Um, the grief of maybe losing this identity that you have it had made its identity. So then
Mhm.
you're losing a part of yourself and having to re-identify, well, who am I now when my identity isn't based on my parents, my
Yes.
siblings, or the trauma that they experienced? Who am I? Mhm.
Yeah, and that's such a scary question for people to ask, and with parentification too, a lot of people tend to maybe not a lot of people, but I will say people often tend to dissociate, and dissociating is normal,
What is
but
dissociation?
so dissociating is whenever your mind and body is disconnected. And maybe this could be you zoning out because you're bored. That's totally normal. That's fine. But dissociating when it happens when you have anxiety about being present, because dissociating stops us from being present and in the current moment. So if we're highly anxious, maybe it could be like I'm on my phone the whole time because I'm anxious, or I withdraw
Mm,
into myself.
mhm.
That's dissociating. And it's our way of staying safe. But when we're doing that, we lose the disconnection between the mind and body. And so this could be maybe you don't even realize that you're hungry. You don't realize that you have to go to the restroom. You don't realize,
Your
like,
self-care needs,
yes.
biological needs. That's what I've been calling, like, I'm not even taking care of my biological needs.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes, like for me, I'll just be like, "Oh yeah, I need to eat. I haven't eaten in a while." I'm eating, and then suddenly, like, I was like, "Oh God, I'm so sick. I ate way too much because I didn't like connect that." Because I'm not if I'm not connected with my body, then it's hard for me to know when I'm actually full or even when I'm hungry. So definitely it's okay to dissociate to an extent, but when that becomes the majority of how you're living your life, it's stopping you from maybe even making memories. Everything can tend to be a blur because you spend most of it in your head and not so much in the present moment.
Yeah, that disconnection definitely endangers yourself, your well being, and also the presence of your relationships and
Mhm.
connections. If you're not present, you're not able to hold those memories. And then you're also not making memories because of the anxious factor that,
Yeah.
that is included in there as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then like with the anxiety,
But wait, there's more.
yeah, there's more. With the anxiety, especially if you have like social anxiety, other people can recognize that in you because they see you as being aloof or like, oh, she just like she
She's
doesn't
just
want to
that
talk to
way.
us.
Yeah, she's just and people that are normalize it for you. They'll
Yeah.
be like, just leave her alone. She'll be fine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's like, no, actually that person's deeply uncomfortable right now and they like highly anxious. That's why they're not interacting. But you like it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy because it's just like, well, I don't have any friends or I feel so alone. And then you stop getting invited because you say no to everything, you turn everything down, or like you go out, well, no one's talking to me, but you've also got yourself in a
Yeah.
corner and it's
So
like,
how much
well,
of that is our personal responsibility? Because and I take that to a high regard. It's like our personal choices and decisions of like,
yeah.
well, how are you speaking to yourself, and then how
Yes.
are you acting on that? Ooh, we got thunder, y'all. So how are you speaking to yourself, and how does that play a role? Because then it leads to consequences. It
Yeah.
leads to effects.
Yes, and being very mindful of your language. Language is so, so important. I don't know if you noticed earlier, I was like, I'm going to, and then I change it to I am because we want to say, I am doing this because I am. It's not something that I'm doing in the future, it's something I'm doing now and forever.
Mhm.
And catch yourself if you're saying, oh, I'm such an idiot. Like, of course I forgot this or
Mhm.
whatever.
Because I am so clumsy.
Yeah, yeah, and just, like, having grace for yourself, like, "Oh, yeah, it's been a really long day. It's okay if I forgot something. Not a
Mhm.
big deal. That has nothing to say about who I am as a person."
Absolutely. It does not have anything
Yeah.
to do. And I've been trying to combat my own irrational beliefs as
Mhm.
well. That's like a working thing for me. So whenever I think about like, oh, what are people gonna think? Or what if this happens?
Mhm.
Or what is it my reality right now? No. Why am I writing a script for it then? Because
Yeah.
then I'm holding space for that fear to live within me.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like, we'll let this thunder pass. Go
It's
ahead.
Houston, it's Houston.
I know.
It's been a week.
Yeah, it's definitely been a week and a difficult week, I would say, too,
Yeah.
for just holding space for ourselves and then trying crisis
Mhm.
like situations and how to mediate that and move forward from it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and I will say that for a lot of people, part of it is just recognizing the language that you use in your head. How are you talking to yourself? Would you say this to a friend? Probably not. And if you wouldn't say it to a friend, then why is it okay for us to say it to ourselves? And if we say something enough times, it can become a core
We hold
belief.
it as truth.
Yep. We hold it as truth, and it now is a core belief. This is something that I hold true about myself. I'm dumb. When that's not true. This is just because you had a thought does not make it fact. It does not make it real. So being able to say, like, oh, this is just a thought that I had in my head. It's nothing more. And saying, okay, well, where is this thought coming from? Am I anxious about this? Am I afraid that maybe people saw me fall because I'm so clumsy, and maybe other people are going to call me clumsy? So I'm going to say it about myself
Right. It
first.
is based on a situation and experience that you had, and then whatever got echoed from that experience, then you make it a core belief. Did you see Inside Out too?
No, I have not seen it. I want
I don't
to.
want to spoil it, but definitely go watch it. I felt like it had a pretty good explanation
Yeah.
about the memories we hold and the experiences and how they become core beliefs, and then that core belief becomes us, like as a person and a
Yeah.
whole.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so we are working through a quiz, and so tell us about this quiz.
So there's a lot of different versions of this quiz, but this is the one that is supposed to be the most common and has like the most evidence backing it. So we're going to start off with question 1, and this is true or false. So just check it or write true if it applies to you. So number 1, it seems like family members are always bringing me their problems.
True.
Yes. Like we just said, it was just for me. I'll get a text from my parents that like, "Hey, this happened," and I'm just like, "Okay, what am I supposed to do about that?"
Yeah, for me, well, lately it's been looking like, because Houston weather's been out and in. It's like, hey, all the TVs went off, the cameras went off, come back and reset all the cameras, all the TVs, and so expected to problem solve the
Yeah.
issues.
Do you know why the Netflix isn't working? Nope.
No, well, you should know why we send you to school.
Okay, number 2. In my family, I often feel called upon to do more than my share. Yeah.
Picking up the load for the extra siblings or things that I've been doing, but lately it's gotten better. But I feel for like a long period, I've always kind of picked up more.
Yeah, yeah. And again, this can also be cultural. If you're Latino, if you're Latina, you might have noticed that machismoism. And you might notice that the girls in the family are often subjected to do all the housework, to do the emotional needs as well. So you get more put on you anyways. So again, generational trauma.
Would you like me to read the next one?
Sure.
Okay. I often feel more like an adult than a child in my family.
Yep.
And at what point do you, I guess this is like a reflection if you are an adult? No, a child seeing yourself as an adult.
Yeah, I think this, because this quiz is intended for like children,
Okay.
or to ask your children, but you can also take it yourself. So just, I would say if you're taking this quiz at home, think about growing up. Did you feel more like a child than an adult, or that like an adult more than a child? And definitely I have felt like an adult for a while. And just as an aside, children who have been parentified tend to be called, "Oh, you're so mature. You're so adult for your age."
Well, okay, hard X and true in that one.
Okay, so next one. In my family, I often feel like a referee. Yeah.
Yes.
I was initially thinking, no, 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 that's not true. Then I'm like, oh, wait, yes, it is. Because if like my mom's mad at someone else in the family, she's calling me to tell me all about it.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I guess I am a referee.
Discovering my parentification through this quiz. Okay. In my family, I often make sacrifices that go unnoticed by other family members.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like that's the mental load and like the physical load, because you get to show up and everything's already done for you.
Yeah.
But I'm also not supposed to say how much I've done, because then it's like, well, why'd you do it if you're going to do it out of a bad attitude? Like, well, the expectation was there for me to do it.
Yes. Yep. It's like, well, if you didn't want to do it, you didn't have to do it. And it's like,
Why didn't do it? I was gonna get itch stabs.
yes, exactly, exactly. Okay, so the next one. At times, I feel I am the only one my mother or father can turn to. At all times, I feel like that.
Yes. It's definitely interesting now getting older, but younger, I felt like maybe I was the only one that understood my mom because I was the only one asking specific questions related to her emotions.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. And there's, again, like parentified children tend to feel like, but I'm the only one who can help. I'm the only one who understands the situation. It has to be me, which delves into codependency.
Okay, I often find myself feeling down for no particular reason that I can think of. So for no reason, I'm just feeling some type of way.
Yeah, yeah. And this is when I like to do some reflection on, well, what is it that I'm actually feeling right now? And what led up to this? Because sometimes things happen and we can't tell it, we can't connect it back to anything in that moment.
Hmm.
But then when you start thinking about, okay, well, what were the leading events? Um, how did I wake up this morning? Did I wake up feeling down? Okay, well, what happened yesterday? What led up to that? And then you go until you find the thing and you can break it down and see, oh, okay, that's where it came from. This is why I'm feeling that way. And sometimes I like to do that because it gives me the space to have grace for myself
Hmm.
instead of like, oh, you need to be productive. You need to like get on it. You have things to do. It's like, oh, I'm allowed to have a rest day. I'm allowed to be tired.
And that's hard. The giving ourselves the allowance of rest,
Hmm.
especially when you come with the ethics of like you're expected to do.
Yeah.
Um, in my family, there are certain family members I can wait. Did we just read that one?
No.
Okay. In my family, there are certain family members I can handle better than anyone else. I would say that's true for me. Like I feel like sometimes my family tends to treat a certain sibling like a black sheep, but
Mhm.
I'm the only one that gets to understand that person. Like
Yeah.
I'm the only one that has done the work to understand instead of just saying that or giving them that label, which I think
Mhm.
is an ugly label to give.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, for sure. For me, I'm not sure if this one quite matches. Um, yeah, I think I'm gonna leave this one off for now, but maybe I just need to do some more reflection on that because that question does make me sit and think about it. Like, huh,
Hmm.
maybe I need to reflect on this one. Because personally, I can think about it is easier to talk to some members of my family. For example, my dad is like very stoic. He doesn't share a whole lot. He doesn't share his feelings at all.
Hmm.
If I give him a gift, I never know if he actually likes it or not until like much later when he's just like, "Oh yeah, I'm using the Roku you got me," or
Hmm.
like whatever.
And is this said with excitement or is this just said passively like I'm using it and then you
Yeah,
know that they've appreciated it?
yeah. It's kind of
Okay,
it's kind
okay.
of like more like passive. Or but sometimes he also doesn't even know what it is that I gave him. So he's got to figure it out first.
Got it, got it.
Okay, so the next one. I am very active in the management of my family's financial affairs. Um, this one I'm gonna say no. Well, now I am, but actually, yeah. Because growing up, my dad liked to do the thing where, oh well, I guess if you don't give me money for this, we're not gonna have satellite. We're not gonna have this or that.
Mm-hmm.
So he would put the financial responsibility on me, and I'm just like, I'm 16. I just want to buy some shoes and makeup.
I know. Um, I think definitely true for me as well on this one. Some of the paying the bills or even mentally being conservative about what the expenses were going to. Like we would go to
Yeah.
the mall and I would be like, no, no compremos eso. Like, let's not buy it.
Yeah.
Like it looks expensive. And so I'm thinking about their finances.
Yes.
And then my mom would be like, no, I'm telling you to get it because I'm telling you to get it. But I'm just feeling bad because I feel like I'm wasting the family's money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although it's something I needed, like uniform or something.
Yes, exactly.
My parents have enough to do without worrying about housework as well.
Yes. Hard yes.
Mm. Like coming home from work and just being like, well, I gotta cook, I gotta clean for them.
Yeah, yeah. And again, this is us trying to relieve them of their burden, by adding more burden onto ourselves.
Wow. I'm like, how have I done that now? And then added it to my partner and be
Yeah.
like, well, you don't need to take care of it. Let me do it.
Yes.
But then I get burned out and I get
Yeah.
upset.
Yes, and that's a really good point. I actually did wanna bring that up earlier,
Mhm.
is that, I'll have a lot of clients that come in with, like, that have codependency issues, and they're givers, and they give, give, give so much, but when their partner's not doing the same level of giving, they get really upset, and it's like, "But I've, like,
Mm,
poured this all of this into you. I've given you so much. I do everything for you. Why aren't you doing anything for me?" But for one, the partner never asked for them to do all of those
and
things.
the argument's always like, I never asked you to do that.
Yeah, yeah. So being careful, being mindful with your own energy and how much are you giving an appropriate amount, or is this more like you're doing way too much because you want the other person to like you, and that's how you know how to connect,
Wow.
because you this is what you did as a kid.
Hmm.
So be mindful of how parentification can affect you in your later life. Is this me?
Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead.
I am very uncomfortable when things aren't going well at home. Yes.
Yeah, I think I've avoided like coming home
Mhm.
or finding somewhere else to be. And yeah, just because it felt uncomfortable being home.
Yeah, I heavily relate to that.
It often seems that my feelings aren't taken into account in my family.
Mhm.
Feel like, yeah, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, yeah, and for me, I will say that growing up, my mom or both of my parents were just like, "Oh, you're gonna take care of your brother when you're an adult. Like, that's gonna be your job." And
Mhm.
so to put that on someone, I wanna say I was, like, maybe elementary school aged when I first remember being told that and being very upset at that time. And that's always just been a continuous expectation, and if I don't wanna do it, it's like, "Yeah, yeah, I get it. You don't wanna do this." But it's like blaming me for
Mm,
wanting to be able to do my own thing,
hmm.
because it's a lot to be able to take care of, like, someone to be a care not just taking care of someone else, but to be a caregiver.
Yeah, caregiver burnout is a thing. And
Yeah, compassion fatigue.
yes. Okay. In my family, I initiate most free time activities. I would say this issue for me. Like, we even try to implement like Google invitation for at least a hangout once a month.
Mhm,
And I get the initiative was that we weren't spending enough time together and there
mhm.
was a family disconnect. And so we try to initiate it, but who's doing the planning?
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. This one doesn't hold true for me because I would spend my time doing my own thing. I
Girl, as
wasn't
you should.
yeah, I was like, I wasn't trying to hang out with family. I mean, sometimes, yeah, but mostly I was like, I'm gonna get out of the house. I've got my own things to do.
Hmm. And then get guilted for like, you're never home.
Yes, yes. I am at my best in times of crisis. Yeah,
Wow.
that's when I feel like I feel calm and okay, I know what to do. I got this.
I got like in a car accident last month and I got out the car. I didn't even hold space for me to panic, have an anxiety, like anything. I
Mhm.
just got out, was like composed. I'm like, get out the car, get my phone, call the police. Like,
Mhm.
and then it wasn't until much later where I was like, bawling like my
Yeah.
eyes out. Um, but then I feel like I do best in like situations where, okay, maybe I procrastinated. So like I'm at the
Yes,
end and
exactly.
then now it's a crisis, but now I'm like, oh, I could do this all the time.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking in my head. I was like, "Yeah," because, I put things off until it becomes like a crisis, and it's like, "Oh, gotta do this now." Um, it seems like there are enough problems at home without my causing more. Yes.
I say yes to this next one is if a family member is upset, I almost always become involved in some way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not always by choice. Oftentimes, I
You
get
get
the
dragged
phone
in?
call. Hmm?
You get dragged in?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I thought you said you get drunken. I was like,
No,
"What?"
not drunken.
No, no,
You
no.
get dragged in.
Maybe after.
You're like, I
No.
need to. Yeah, I feel like people don't know where else to share their emotions, so
Yeah.
they'll end up calling.
Yes.
Mhm.
I often resent being asked to do certain kinds of jobs. Yes. And again, this can bleed out into other areas of my life and not just my family because my family has asked me to do so much. When someone else asks me to do something, it's just like I shut down and I'm just like, ugh, why? Why? And that could be like the first time that they've asked me to do something, but it's just something that I'm already doing so much of that it just feels way too overwhelming.
Yeah. People ask me for a task and it could be something simple, but then I'm like, why me?
Yes.
I often prefer the company of people older than me.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think I've seen this in myself since like middle school. I was too close to my teachers
Yeah.
and I knew too much of their personal lives. And even going into high school, I found that me as a freshman, my friends were seniors.
Yeah.
Um, and even hanging out older, like some of my friendships are like plus 30, plus
Yeah.
40.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I am frequently responsible for the physical care of some members of my family. Yeah.
Yeah, I worry about doctor's appointments for
Yes.
my family. My mom's thyroidism and making sure like my dad's diabetes is in
Mhm.
control. And I even like Amazon order like his like little sticks and all that stuff. Or I get
Yeah.
my mom's emails about her appointments. I'm just
Yeah,
realizing all that.
I have my parents, like, appointments in my calendars, and now, they're older, my dad doesn't drive anymore, so it's me taking time off work to go drive them around to appointments or Ubering them if they can, if Uber is available. They live in a small town, so it's not always available.
Okay. Alrighty. Was this one mine or yours?
I think it's yours.
I am often described as mature for my age. But I also wonder how like I wouldn't say good or bad this one is, but it's like you being around these older crowds and getting
Yeah.
poured into and mentored. Like I think it had like it's a flip of a coin,
Mhm.
where on the other hand, perhaps I also like wanted more,
Yeah.
hmm
Yeah, and
and push
so
more.
not everything about parentification, not all of your symptoms are bad. So some
So
things
I don't
can
feel
be
all that
good.
guilty.
Some things are good. I think when it's an issue is when you don't know how to be a child. And I don't know that I necessarily know how to be a child because I spent so much of my life just taking care of my brothers, or being worried about how my parents were reacting to things. Because back then, autism wasn't really well known.
hmm
Um, it was hardly diagnosed. And to have two brothers with autism in the family, they're like, oh, this is a huge deal. And there was doctor's appointments almost every month. I was constantly being pulled out of school because we couldn't like have a babysitter, or it was just easier for me to go with them.
hmm
So I was always going to doctor's appointments, and that's part of why I went into counseling because I saw the effect it had on the family as a whole. And it
hmm
was more so just like, oh, okay, how are they doing on this medicines? Good, good. Okay, well, we're gonna keep it like that, or not good. Okay, but a lot of times my parents felt like it's our fault. We did something wrong. And also again, like having two brothers with autism, I didn't really get any support. So I was just like, okay, there has to be something more. Like there has to be a way to support the family. The children, of course, they need help and support, but autism effects or any kind of developmental disorder or mental illness or substance use, whatever, that affects the whole family, not just the person that has it.
That's true. That's true. It steeps into all aspects in
Yeah.
relationships. It seems that I am usually the one held responsible for most of what happens. Like, yeah, why didn't you do it, Denise?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. So I believe this is 21 questions. And I said yes to all but one, two. I said all. So 19.
All of mine had a mark. Well, I learned something new today.
Yay. So if you notice yourself relating to a lot of what we talked about and checking off a lot of questions to that, definitely recommend therapy. Just having that space to be able to talk about it and have someone who knows, like, because again, if it's really normalized within your family, it's hard for people to say, hey, maybe this isn't okay. So when you have someone who's unbiased and can and trained to recognize those,
Mhm.
it can be helpful to speak that out with them and talk it out and reflect and learn about like, well, what can I do differently?
Yes.
Um, and one of my favorite books that talks about parentification is Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents by Lindsay
The
Gibson.
title is very giving,
Yes, very, very.
very straightforward.
Yeah, so that one, I always recommend it to my clients, especially if they come from an immigrant background, because most of what we face has to do with adults being emotionally immature because they weren't taught how to regulate their emotions. They weren't taught how to take care of themselves and get their own needs met. So that is a great way to just find out and recognize what your patterns are, and even if you are emotionally immature,
Mhm.
which most likely, if you have adult parents who are emotionally mature, you probably have some symptoms and of it, and you might be too. And that's okay. It's just about learning. Oh, okay, this is how I respond to something. It's not healthy. I can do something different.
Mhm. And then and being in a growth mindset to
Yeah.
receiving to growing and not always thinking it's a fixed way of being.
Yeah.
Because right, it goes back to how earlier we said it depends on how you talk to yourself. So if you tell yourself, well, I'm just this way, like I don't know what you want me to do, like there's no growth mindset in that. It's very much fixed and believing there's no hope, no change for you.
Yeah.
Versus in the growth mindset of allowing for you to transcend into different versions of yourself because time changes, you should change too.
Yeah. And if you're hearing this and you're feeling a bit angry and upset
I'm
at your
sorry.
parents, totally normal. Most people come away feeling angry because it's just like, this is just more that my parents have given me. It's just more that I have to go to therapy for and more work that I have to do. Um, and again, it's okay to be angry, but to continue healing and moving forward, part of why like understanding how emotional maturity shows up is knowing that, okay, my parents did the best they could.
Mhm.
They only had so many tools to work with, and I have to be understanding of that and realizing what they can and can't give me. So if I know that my parents aren't able to give me the emotional support I need, then I know, okay, I'm not going to continue going to them for it because I'm going to walk away hurt and disappointed each time.
That boundary, that defense mechanism that you end up
Yeah.
building.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, and something else that I'm reading right now is The Emotionally Unavailable Mother.
Mhm.
So even if your mom wasn't like purely emotionally unavailable, it's still a good book to listen to because she takes you through like what it looks like, the different types of emotional unavailability, and how that can show up for you. So, highly recommend that book as
Mhm.
well. And I'll give Denise a list of books that I
Yeah.
put together on parentification.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And that one
You're
kind of hits
welcome.
really home for me. Some of the holding space for my feelings and emotions. And I think even when I wanted to express my feelings and
Mhm.
emotions as a child, it was received with judgment. So I then started repressing my
Yeah.
emotions to not upset this person. Or
Yeah.
I already knew, like, "Oh, why do I even tell this person anything? They're not going to respond the way I want them to. So I'm going to just be hurt anyways."
Yeah, yeah, and
Mhm.
for me, the way that it showed up, I think, was, being self-sufficient, and it's just like, "Okay, well, they can't do it for me, I'm gonna do it for myself, and I'm gonna be angry about it," and, something that the book talked about was just like, yeah, let's say you're mad at someone and, you know, they because they have triggered your abandonment wound,
Mhm.
and then they come back and you're still like, "I'm gonna ignore them, I'm gonna pretend like I don't see them because I'm mad and I want them to see me doing this on my own. I want them
Mm,
to see that I can do it without you."
mhm.
But in reality, all you want is for that person to come and be like,
Just see me, just
"Yeah,
recognize me.
yes, just see me, recognize that I need the support."
Mhm.
Um, and one last thing, again, if you're struggling with the mind body connection, yoga. Find some free yoga online or go to a yoga class if you can. It does a lot with just connecting you back
Mhm.
to your breath, which breath work is so important, and being able to regulate your emotions. And again, like connect. If you've experienced trauma, more than likely you'll notice that you hold your breath a lot. You might notice that your breath gets caught in your throat. You just like it just goes to your chest, and that's as far as it goes instead of like straight to your belly.
Stagnant energy.
Yeah, yeah. So, yoga helps with connecting with your body. And don't worry about like, oh, I've got to do the poses correctly. It's not about that. It's about being able to center yourself and come back to your breath.
Thank you, Amanda. And as a disclaimer, this does not replace actual therapeutic, clinical sitting in the chair with your therapist. And definitely, if you find yourself in a space where you feel like you need help, you are going through adjustments, definitely there's many referrals that we can do, provide you with. And also, Google is one click away from you. There is so many places to look for a therapist, like Psychology Today,
Mental health match.
mental health match. The new one, Latinx therapy.
Yes.
Yes.
Clinicians of color.
So there's many spaces and ways for you to get connected. And so if you find yourself in a need to be having further assistance, definitely look out for it. Look out for yourself. Is there anything else you would like to leave our guests with? And where can we find you if we want to follow up with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Ajana Therapy, AJANA, or Therapy for Chingonas, which is CHINGONAS. So you can find me there. You can also go to ajanatherapy.com and go to, I believe it says meet our team, or book a session, and you can find me there. I do accept Aetna, but other than that, I am private pay, but I'm currently open.
Thank you so much. And again, my name is Denise Morales with In My Fields Para Heal podcast. If you love this podcast, like, subscribe, and support us through donations. We are a nonprofit and we will be providing some more things for you in store. So thank y'all and see you later.